Imagine a sequel that had everything going for it. A beloved original, returning cast, bigger budget, and cutting-edge effects, yet managed to become the perfect example of everything wrong with Hollywood sequel culture. Picture a film that accidentally demonstrated the very corporate cynicism its predecessor had brilliantly satirized. This was Robocop 2. And it remains one of cinema's most ironic failures. When Robocop 2 rolled into theaters in June 1990, it seemed guaranteed to succeed. Paul Verhoeven's original had been both critical darling and box office hit, proving that audiences embraced smart, satirical science fiction. With Frank Miller writing the screenplay and veteran director Irvin Kershner behind the camera, the sequel appeared to have all the right ingredients. Instead, Robocop 2 became a cautionary tale about corporate interference, destroying artistic vision, ironically embodying the soulless corporate mentality that the original film had mocked so effectively. Robocop 2 operates as an unintentional masterclass in how corporate thinking can destroy the very essence of what made something special, transforming sharp social satire into mindless spectacle. The film's greatest irony lies in how Orion Pictures' interference and commercial demands perfectly mirrored the soulless corporate behavior that Paul Verhoeven's original had so brilliantly critiqued. Where the first Robocop used violence as satirical commentary on American brutality and media sensationalism, the sequel simply escalated the carnage without understanding its purpose. Frank Miller's comic book sensibilities, while effective in print, translated poorly to Verhoeven's carefully constructed cinematic universe. Miller's approach treated violence as entertainment rather than commentary, stripping away the European outsider's perspective that had made Verhoeven's critique so incisive. The film's central failure stems from its fundamental misunderstanding of what made Robocop compelling.
Robocop, Crime Prevention Unit.
Studio executives saw the original's success and concluded that audiences wanted more action, bigger explosions, and increased violence. They missed entirely that viewers had responded to the film's intelligence, its biting corporate satire, and its surprisingly human story about identity and consciousness. Robocop 2's approach to franchise building exemplified the sequel-by-committee mentality that would dominate 1990s filmmaking. Every decision seemed designed to please focus groups rather than serve the story, resulting in a film that felt manufactured rather than created. The introduction of Robocop 2 as antagonist represented pure escalation logic. If one cyborg was good, surely a bigger, more violent cyborg would be better. Most damningly, the sequel abandoned the original's prescient warnings about corporate control and media manipulation, instead becoming a victim of those very forces. Robocop 2 didn't just fail as entertainment, it became a real-time demonstration of how corporate interference could strip intelligence and meaning from potentially powerful material. Robocop 2 emerged from a perfect storm of creative miscommunication and corporate pressure that would become the template for countless failed sequels throughout the 1990s. The project's troubles began with Paul Verhoeven's decision not to return, leaving Orion Pictures scrambling to find a director who could capture the original's unique blend of satire and spectacle without understanding what made that combination work. Irvin Kershner, fresh from his triumph with The Empire Strikes Back, seemed like an inspired choice to helm the sequel. His experience with character-driven blockbusters and proven ability to balance action with emotional depth made him appear perfectly suited for Robocop's world. However, Kershner found himself constrained by studio mandates and a script that prioritized commercial appeal over creative coherence, leaving him unable to apply the directorial skills that had made Empire so successful. The involvement of Frank Miller as screenwriter initially generated excitement among fans of his groundbreaking comic book work. Miller's dark, violent sensibilities seemed compatible with Robocop's dystopian universe, and his reputation for sophisticated storytelling suggested he could maintain the original's satirical edge. Unfortunately, Miller's comic book approach to narrative structure and character development translated poorly to Verhoeven's carefully constructed cinematic world. Orion Pictures' financial difficulties significantly impacted the production's creative freedom. The studio desperately needed a summer blockbuster hit to stabilize their precarious position, creating enormous pressure to deliver crowd-pleasing entertainment rather than challenging social commentary. Every creative decision was filtered through commercial considerations, with executives second-guessing artistic choices that might alienate mainstream audiences. The production process revealed fundamental disagreements about the franchise's direction. While some involved parties wanted to maintain the original's satirical intelligence, others pushed for straightforward action spectacle that would appeal to broader demographics. These competing visions created a film that satisfied neither approach, resulting in a compromised product that pleased no one completely. Most significantly, the production occurred during Hollywood's transition toward franchise-focused filmmaking, making Robocop 2 an early example of sequel-by-committee mentality that would dominate the industry for decades. Reception and industry impact. Robocop 2's reception perfectly illustrated the disconnect between commercial expectations and artistic achievement, with critics and audiences recognizing immediately that something essential had been lost in translation, from the original's satirical brilliance to the sequel's corporate-mandated spectacle. Critics were particularly harsh in their assessment of the film's creative bankruptcy. Roger Ebert noted that while the sequel had more action and violence, it had less wit and satirical bite, identifying exactly what had gone wrong. The Washington Post's Hal Hinson wrote that the film felt like a corporate product designed by committee, unknowingly describing the exact process that had created it. Most reviewers recognized that Robocop 2 had traded the original's intelligence for mindless action, transforming sharp social commentary into generic summer blockbuster fare. Why it failed. The fundamental reason Robocop 2 failed was that Orion Pictures completely misunderstood what had made the original successful. Executives saw the box office numbers and concluded that audiences wanted more violence and bigger action sequences, missing entirely that viewers had responded to Verhoeven's satirical intelligence and subversive social commentary. The studio treated Robocop like a simple action franchise, rather than sophisticated science fiction, stripping away everything that had made it culturally relevant. Box office performance told a deceptive story. The film earned over $45 million domestically, seeming to validate the studio's commercial approach. However, this success masked deeper problems with audience satisfaction and critical reception. While people bought tickets based on the original's reputation, word of mouth quickly spread about the sequel's disappointing quality, limiting its long-term commercial potential and cultural impact. The film's failure to launch the successful franchise that Orion desperately needed highlighted the dangers of prioritizing short-term commercial gains over creative integrity. Rather than building a sustainable brand based on intelligent storytelling, the studio had created a hollow imitation that satisfied neither critics nor devoted fans of the original. Robocop 2's reception became a cautionary tale within the industry about the importance of understanding source material before attempting to replicate its success, legacy, and modern relevance. 3 decades after its release, Robocop 2 has achieved an unexpected form of vindication, not as successful entertainment, but as prophetic warning about the corporate takeover of creative filmmaking that would define modern Hollywood. What seemed like isolated creative failure in 1990 now appears as the first domino in a chain reaction that would transform the entire industry. The film's production process anticipated nearly every problem that plagues contemporary franchise filmmaking. The studio's focus on expanding the brand rather than serving the story, the committee-driven approach to creative decisions, and the prioritization of commercial appeal over artistic integrity became the standard operating procedure for sequel development. Robocop 2 essentially provided the template for the creative compromises that would characterize blockbuster filmmaking for the next 30 years. Contemporary audiences discovering the film through streaming platforms often expressed shock at how accurately it predicted modern corporate filmmaking practices. The sequel's transformation from satirical science fiction to generic action spectacle mirrors the way countless franchises have been stripped of their original personality in pursuit of broader market appeal. Marvel, DC, and other cinematic universes routinely face the same tensions between creative vision and commercial demands that destroyed Robocop 2's potential. The film's satirical relevance has only increased with time. As the corporate dystopia depicted in the original, Robocop has become everyday reality. Media consolidation, surveillance capitalism, and the commodification of every aspect of human experience make the original's warnings seem understated rather than exaggerated. Robocop 2's failure to continue this commentary feels even more tragic, given how prescient the original's themes have proven. Academic film studies programs now use Robocop 2 as a case study in how corporate interference can destroy artistic vision. The film serves as a perfect example of the creative compromises that occur when studios prioritize market research over storytelling, providing concrete evidence of how committee-driven filmmaking produces inferior results. Frank Miller's involvement has generated ongoing debate among comic book and film scholars about the translation of different artistic mediums. While Miller's comic work is widely celebrated, Robocop 2 demonstrated that techniques effective in sequential art don't necessarily work in cinema, particularly when filtered through corporate demands for commercial appeal. Perhaps most significantly, Robocop 2's legacy lies in its role as early warning about the franchise culture that now dominates Hollywood. The film's creative failures anticipated every problem that would plague subsequent decades of sequel filmmaking, from the Marvel Cinematic Universe's formula-driven approach to the endless reboots and remakes that prioritize brand recognition over original storytelling. The sequel's failure to understand its own source material has become emblematic of Hollywood's broader inability to recognize what makes art commercially successful. Studios continue making the same mistakes that doomed Robocop 2, assuming that surface elements rather than deeper themes drive audience engagement. If you enjoyed this exploration of cinema's most prophetic failures, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the films that accidentally predicted the corporate takeover of creative filmmaking.